As I was making my video on cotemporality theory, I realized that something wasn't quite right. I decided to complete the video and publish it anyway because I think it's important and helpful to show how my thinking evolves over time. As my understanding grows, I'm better able to integrate what I've seen into a cohesive whole. As it happens, I almost immediately solved the issue and placed the correction in a comment beneath my video. Every now and then, I make a great leap forward in understanding, yet my memory is so poor that it's very important for me to document these insights because I have a habit of forgetting and having to come to the same conclusion again as though I'd never discovered it in the first place. Making these videos is very helpful, and this video in particular should be a good one as I'm resolved to place a series of valuable insights here so that they aren't forgotten. This is an ambitious video, but I think I can shed some real light on the structure, nature, and purpose of the creation. This won't be a comprehensive and final assessment. It's not within my ability to be so rigorous as to fully define such broad and nuanced topics. Let's begin with the correction to cotemporality theory. Each instance of the original photon occupies a different location in third-dimensional time from the others, but motion in third-dimensional time isn't the cause of cotemporal generation. I had seen that each instance of the original photon is arrayed along the great ladder of light of third-dimensional time, and misunderstood this to mean that motion in third-dimensional time leads to the generation of new copies of the original photon. This was an honest misunderstanding. I now have a more complete understanding, and it's helped me to better integrate some of my memories of the creation of our universe and the nature of contests of power using light. The phenomenon of cotemporal generation is the result of time travel, but it is not the result of time travel along the third dimension of time. It is the result of time travel along the first dimension of time, and it is possible because all of time occurs simultaneously. Time is simply another form of space. Let me explain by describing for you the nature, purpose, and structure of creation. Everything is God. There is a great spirit, and this spirit is a mind, and this mind is everything. Nothing exists outside of the unity of the Creator. This mind is infinite, and this infinite mind perceived the concept of finite things, of finity. God, then, began an infinite process of discovery. The Infinite One began exploring finity. This could also be stated as the Infinite One beginning to explore manyness. This exploration continues to this day and may very well never end, as there are infinite expressions of finity. This is the purpose behind the existence of the creation, God's self-exploration. The Most High God steps himself down into lesser roles so as to engage with the creation. As he steps himself down, he is intentionally limited so as to ensure that the evolution of these universes of self-discovery occurs naturally. He intentionally keeps himself from interfering with the experiment too casually. He's been trying to find the proper definition of finite things and their interactions. I believe that he's still, in a sense, defining terms. He's trying to find the proper framework through which to explore manyness. There have been many experiments of creation with varying degrees of success. The difficulty of explaining this process of creation is compounded by the fact that all instances in time are simultaneous, and thus God is both searching for and has found the proper way in which to frame the exploration of finity. This is further compounded by the fact that there are likely an infinite number of ways through which finity can be framed, and that the refinement of the definition of finite things and their relationships occurs as a result of a natural process of discovery and evolution. We discover problems in our framework and establish solutions to these problems as part of the exploration of finity itself. God is seeking the perfect way to express himself within the context of finite things. As everything is formed of God, there is a need for a natural justice. Everything is equally formed of God, yet not everything equally expresses the nature of God. For there is a truth to the nature of God, an equality of love and acceptance. All things are unified, although within creation there is the illusion of separation. The unity of all things demands a universal compassion when it is fully understood, for everything that exists is a part of you and speaks to your nature. We are surrounded by mirrors, reflecting the reality of who we are. No matter what you do, you are an irreplaceable and precious part of God. Your actions teach God about himself, yet it is possible, as a result of free will, to wander very far from the core of truth, from the heart of God. There is an undeniable nature and truth which converts even the most willfully lost of God's children the very moment it is encountered and understood. The exploration of finity is intended to occur within the framework of this truth. Anything less would lead to an unsatisfactory exploration of finity, because it wouldn't truly be exploring the nature of God, but would rather be an exploration of a caricature, a result of the poor definition of terms. The work of God through the Trinity, who are in the process of the conquest of death, is a huge step towards the proper definition of creation. The end goal of the Son is for him to be established as ruler over all creation from within the creation. This allows a stepped-down version of the Most High God, having authority over the creation, to directly interact with the creation via acts of faith, ensuring that perfect justice reaches everyone. The Son is intended to faithfully carry out instructions stepped down from the Most High God. This separation is a form of balancing, so that there are appropriate barriers to interference from outside of the creation. This is a guarantee that creation will evolve naturally, yet will keep the spirit of truth at its heart. Guidance will always be available to steer us back on course and keep our exploration of finity maximally stimulating. Everything is formed of God, thus even what we call evil is a part of God. I've experienced for myself the fact that God has urges which we would typically consider horrifying. The true law allows for the exploration of all desires where there is true consent at the level of the soul. This allows for many things which we would usually condemn to be explored without the need for balancing in the form of judgment and punishment. In a creation where all things are unified, tolerance of the desires of others is natural and right, so long as those desires are met through consensual interaction. The true God is extremely permissive and accepting. Jesus said, "Whatever you ask in my name, this I will do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask me anything in my name, I will do it." Anything is permissible where there is true consent at the level of the soul. Souls can consent to activity that the person in incarnation does not remember and would not want. True consent can appear on the surface to lead to some awful situations, but each person's soul's preferences take priority over their lived incarnational preferences. A time is coming when we will be able to see the truth of consent within every situation. Without understanding the broader context of reincarnating souls and their needs, we will never understand true justice. When God's justice returns to the world, we will be able to rest assured that any breaches of free will shall be met with a properly balanced and just judgment from God, judgment that comes from a loving Father, seeking to teach us the error of our ways and bring us home, a judgment that is firm yet compassionate. If you've ever stood before God as I have, and been judged as I have, then you'll know how it feels to be utterly exposed. You may as well be completely naked, because nothing at all is hidden. No amount of excuses or rationalizations will rescue you from the living God. I know how it feels to be taken apart and reforged by God's will and justice. When he comes, Any bow that does not bend shall be broken. Yet, when you find yourself judged and taken apart by God, you cannot escape acknowledging the justice of it. You will be brought to see your own iniquities, and you will accept God's judgment as just. It's quite a thing to fall into the hands of the living God. What I've learned is that the creation is a bit like a story. Good stories are well balanced. The actions taken make sense. There's no sudden change of rules without proper justification. Many attempts at defining the creation have met with little success. In fact, many creations made by the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit have led to failure, in the sense that what we call evil actually won. I remember being shown the progress of these universes and the larger context of our quest to set the precedent of the conquest of death. I've seen these events from many different perspectives because I have been stepped down many times. There have been many failures, for want of a better word. I should add here that death in the spiritual sense is distance from God. Some people are so distant from God that they have even been renounced by God, and God has revoked all authority over them. This was the result of a poor understanding of the nature of creation, and a consequence of the stepping down of God, the expression of free will, and a great deal of confusion. The precedent of the conquest of death sets the precedent that God can lay down his authority and pick it back up again. This allows God to pick up the authority over those who were renounced by God, placing them back under his authority and making them subject to his judgment once more. Setting such a powerful precedent requires a tremendous amount of work justifying the change of rules. The mind of the Most High God won't accept such a change without proper justification. The death and resurrection of Jesus were part of this work, but there has been so much more that was necessary in order to set the precedent. His death and resurrection were symbolically powerful, but one death is nowhere near enough to justify such a change. The Son has descended into hell itself and returned. He has explored the depths of death and died many times to set this precedent. He not only dies for us all, but he lives and he suffers so that we may experience life under the Lord's perfect justice. When prior attempts at setting the great precedent failed, God simply chose to end those universes without letting them run their course. He learned from the experience and then moved on to a new universe to try again. The Most High God has not accepted this behavior, however. These universes have had to run their course. Apparently, this precedent has gone quite well compared to others, but there were still many universes where God had to suffer defeat. I've been trying to choose a different word to evil, and I've settled on opposition, because this opposition is a legitimate part of God, just like everything else, and it is telling us something about the nature of God. This opposition tends to be the consequence of something having been rejected by God, some need that hasn't been met or has been excluded. The truth is represented by the Father, but the opposition is represented by the anti-Father. I've learned not to condemn him outright. The anti-Father is the voice of restlessness within the mind of God. He responds to rejection and he acts as resistance against God's desire to change rules in God's favor. He jealously guards the power he has amassed as a result of the improper definition of creation. He makes the creation far more interesting and challenging, and in a sense represents a force of change and a force resisting change. His existence is necessary because he guarantees that restlessness and unease in the mind of God receives a hearing within the creation. If something isn't being represented in the truth, he is spurred to act, although he is intensely stern and demanding. He goes well beyond simply raising the issue. It ends up being a bit like a tantruming toddler refusing to be consoled. There's a core of truth somewhere, some unmet need, but it's surrounded by noise and difficult to discern. God had to make concessions to the Antifather as a form of reparation for the lost opportunities when universes were ended to avoid opposition victory. I saw the consequences of these concessions and was horrified by them. These defeats had to run their course, and it seems to have led to a situation where there is an enormous hidden network of power which dwarfs our own universe. We are massively outmatched for power. It is the agreement between the Father and the Antifather which keeps this enormous power at bay. If we fail on Earth, then there is no hope for our universe. Setting this precedent of the conquest of death, along with infiltration of the opposition network, is our path to victory. I was shown the consequences of defeat. I saw the Son, having completed his work in one of these lost universes, preparing to close the universe in the proper way. He was seated on his throne when enemies appeared out of nowhere, and a battle of power ensued. The Son was overcome by this hidden power, and his opponent raped him before his own throne. The Son had willingly agreed to this before the creation of these universes, so that all righteousness could be completed and the great precedent could be set. Over many universes this fate befell him, and he was used until the opposition tired of using him, and the relevant universe was then added to their power, one for each failure. As a child I was disgusted by this, and I railed against him for being weak. I told him how I would never let that happen to me, and that I was stronger. The punishment for this was quite fitting. For a time, I was sent to experience this for myself, in his place. He spared me the parts I couldn't bear. He didn't subject me to the brutal torture he experienced before the whole of each universe. I simply experienced having my authority defied, being overcome, and being taken. I saw my angels shamelessly grow to love the abuse. The power I would give them to resist would simply be used as token resistance to make their conquest more exciting. I felt totally betrayed and abandoned. I myself began to enjoy the experience, the pleasure of being overcome by a greater power and used for another's pleasure. These are perfectly healthy experiences to explore. It was actually a lot of fun once I got my head round it. I refused to admit it for a great length of time, though, and I was a seriously dangerous and exceptionally crazy bitch during these experiences. I had access to God's power, without God's wisdom, but with his intellect. He hadn't properly considered the danger, because I learned to unleash terrible hidden ideas and power as I attempted to defend myself. I'm the one who unleashed the concept of using contracts of the type I described on the world of death. That was my bad. I seized a great deal of power from the darkness by using this method, but I was technically in breach of the agreement between the Father and the Antifather. I caused serious trouble, but I've come to realize that my role is to be the agent of change. I'm the one who gets reduced so much that I'm guided by my character into instigating great change in the creation. I'm the very face of plausible deniability. I'm given authority without wisdom, and then I'm loosed on the creation. I make the desired change, and then I'm punished, even though the change was part of the plan all along. I'm the guy who gives mankind fire, and then gets bound to a rock so that my ever-regenerating liver can be consumed daily by an eagle. That seems to be the nature of my reward, because I must be punished for my actions. I have been heavily chastised. God has made an example of me, and carefully rejected every part of my character deemed unworthy of godhood. I get to be God's patsy, yet he and I are one, and I've seen from the perspective of God at many levels of existence. I remember watching the setting of the precedent of the conquest of death from a level above the Father over the earth and above the Son as Christ. I watched them do it. They returned and explained that it had been successful, and then they instructed me that it was time for me to enter the experience. I was a patsy there too, Let me explain. My perception had been limited just as it has been during my descent into and out of death. They told me to enter the experience, but I didn't understand that it could be done, or how, although I was willing. To my horror, I found myself being pulled into the wonderful, yet appalling mess of experience before me. Then I asked how the two of them could force me to enter the experience when I was the Most High God. They responded by saying that I wasn't the Most High God, that He was behind me. The concept of behind me was very radical from my perspective because I thought I was everything. So I began to turn around. They implored me to stop, but there was no way I was going to keep my back turned in this situation. I turned around, and there I saw something so overwhelming and beautiful. It was unimaginably greater than me, but I didn't feel small. I felt like I was coming home. That light was home. When I turned around again, everything had disappeared. The Father and the Son and all creation was gone. Apparently the act of turning back to home had drawn everything back with me, which was why I was told not to turn. The true Most High God restored things to how they were, and suddenly it all made sense to me, as I remembered the Father and Son looking at me and puzzling over things I'd said and saying things like, "Why did he say that?" And "What is he trying to show us now?" And "What did he mean by that?" But they weren't asking me what I meant or what I was trying to say, because I was simply being projected by something far greater as a means of ensuring confusion and properly limiting interference. They were trying to understand what the Most High God was saying. I suspect that this is what it means to be the Holy Spirit. I'm like the impulsive heart of God, a sincere, reaching child, tossed about by experience. I am the agent of change, God's Spirit. I'm wild, impulsive, and dangerous, naive, curious, and caring. I've been guilty of great pride and self-righteousness. I'm the one who rejected the rejected things. I refused to accept parts of myself, and now I pay the price of their reintegration with God. I have been incredibly resistant to change, yet true change can only come through me. Through my experiences, I've learned to seek out and embrace growth. It has taken time, but I have matured through my trials. I was pulled into the experience to try it for myself, and here I am, as it is written. Out of the anguish of his soul he shall see and be satisfied. By his knowledge shall the righteous one, my servant, make many to be accounted righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the many, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul to death, and was numbered with the transgressors. Yet he bore the sin of many, and makes intercession for the transgressors. The angels have told me that I am the Holy Spirit, and I know from what I've seen that the Father changes the true name of the Son, and has used these changes to diminish me and then raise me up once again. The life of Jesus is in my past, having been one of the first works accomplished in setting this precedent in our present universe. The angels told me that I was him, yet I am not him. I have a different true name, and he is far greater than me. The Trinity is unified, and I seem to have memories from each, and memories from several different levels of being. God's true law is being established in the creation. All things are permitted where there is true consent. It is a law of radical acceptance and love. There is even a place for those who seek to cause everything to serve themselves, but after a time it becomes impossible to deny the truth and conversion occurs. The truth is a firm foundation and does not bow to untruth. So, God steps himself down so that he can explore finity and seeks to fully establish himself as Lord within the creation. How does he do it? A stepped-down version of the Creator who has authority to create a new universe refines a series of archetypal thoughts through which the universe can be defined and explored. He integrates these archetypes into a form of thought body. I've seen this as a humanoid form. This body, which I've come to call our being, becomes home to a person, a spirit. In our universe, the first person is the Son of God, who exists outside of the creation with the Father. He enters the construct of archetypal thoughts, which defines all possible thought within the universe to be formed. He enters a being. This being is then surrounded by light, a single photon, which is brought into existence. The being is connected to this light by a tether, which is part of the light. The light is the soul, or vehicle, or room through which the creation will be formed and through which it will be experienced. The being is placed within this room, although it can also wander out of the room, but incarnation is only possible from within the room. In a sense, each of us is a trinity. We have a spirit, which is our identity. This emerges from the mind of the Creator and enters the construct of archetypal thoughts, our being, which could be called the mind. This being is placed within a vehicle of light, which I've been calling a soul, and which could be called our body, because it is the vehicle through which interaction with the universe is possible. Our vehicle, or room of light. Each of us is formed of a body, a mind, and a spirit. The Trinity is likely also separated in this way. The Holy Spirit is the Spirit. Christ is the body, and the Father is the mind. Each is an indispensable part of the whole. Each is part of the same person. I suspect that light is the product of motion in space and time. It is a vibration in space and time. Time is also just space projected into 3 other dimensions. Time is a series of locations. An object has a location in coordinate space and a location in coordinate time, although these locations change as time passes. All energy, and thus all matter, is the product of vibration in the fabric of coordinate space and coordinate time. All matter and energy exists in a plenum. There is no truly empty space. Everything is occupied by something, even if it is only the basic plenum. This plenum is the unified field, the field of coordinate time and coordinate space. I know that every location is filled because of the things I've seen. Time travel and teleportation are possible if you are meant to go to your target destination. If it is appropriate for you to travel there, then the plenum will yield to your presence. But if you aren't meant to be somewhere, then the plenum will not yield to you, and your presence will be rejected even by what appears to be empty space. Your attempt at teleportation will fail on account of this fact. Ultimately, everything is formed of vibration in thought within the mind of God. This vibration forms light. There are 3 dimensions of time and 3 dimensions of space. These dimensions of time can be conceptualized as follows. The first dimension of time is time as we intuitively understand it, the moving forward and backwards through time. The second dimension of time is the movement across variant timelines or alternate realities. The third dimension of time is motion into higher and lower intensities of energy. The third dimension of time is like the spine of creation. It is Jacob's ladder. This is where each instance of the original photon is expressed based upon its specific energy level at any particular locus of space and time. Motion in time is quantized, and all existence in time is simultaneous. Thus all possible pasts, presents, and futures already exist. They are simply separated from us. They essentially exist in different locations to our present location. We cannot know which future is ours until the moment of choice, as each possible future exists ahead of us as a possibility-probability vortex until we choose a possibility. Cotemporality is the key to understanding the universe. in conjunction with the true simultaneity of all time. God, as a body-mind-spirit complex, engages in an act of will. He wills to create a universe. Based upon his will and authority, his credibility, the universe responds. The original light is joined by many other lights, which appear to come into existence from nowhere, but the secret to their existence is cotemporality. God's credible expression of will is vital to the success of creation. God essentially wills to create a universe. He wills that he shall travel through time to the end of the universe, and then send his light back to the beginning of the universe, so that another can experience existence with him. He wills that he shall send back a light for each spirit who seeks existence within this creation. He has credibility, and he has authority, so many seek experience with him. These spirits emerge from the mind of the Creator and are also given beings to inhabit. As all of time occurs simultaneously, each of these lights appears at the beginning of the creation with him. He never needs to travel through a creation alone. He has already reached that place and sent them back. Even the beginning of existence in the creation requires an act of faith in God. Each of these lights is a cotemporal copy of the original photon. When God reaches the end of the universe, he separates his being and spirit from his vehicle of light, vacating the original photon. He sends this back so that another spirit and being can enter into it and use it as a vehicle to explore the universe. The photon is sent back at a level of vibration that is unique at the locus of time and space into which it is sent. No two photons exist at precisely the same energy level at precisely the same time. This photon arrives at the beginning of the universe and coexists with the original photon. They both exist at the same time, yet they are both the same photon. They exist cotemporally with each other. They are capable of interacting within space, but also share a connection through time, which is how phenomena such as quantum entanglement become possible. In this model, all parts of the creation contain the whole of the creation. Take any photon in the creation and examine its 3 dimensions of time, and you will find all of the rest of the creation. You will see its past, present, and future, all of its alternate timelines, and all of its cotemporality. This will be the same for all photons, and thus all things. The universe is holographic. By this I mean that you can think of it like one of those old holograms, where the image repeats within itself and seems to go on repeating forever. Wherever you look, you'll find the entire creation. Everything is visible and discoverable through everything. This literally means that all things are one. Another way of saying this is that all things which are external to us are also internal. The existence of the physical constants is now explained. They are derived from the properties of the one and only photon which forms all things. This theory gives us the tools we need to understand the strange behavior seen at the quantum scale. Spooky action at a distance, as Albert Einstein put it, now makes sense, as not only can all things be connected through space, but all things are connected through time. When we shield our experiments, we are only shielding in coordinate space. Signals can still pass through coordinate time. These signals moving through time will appear to arrive instantaneously from our perspective, and this doesn't require the breaking of the speed of light. Suddenly, the phenomenon of quantum entanglement becomes a simple matter of particles being connected through time, communicating through that temporal connection, leading to synchronized changes of state. Instantaneous communication systems are possible within this model over any distance. Motion through time is quantized. The universe is arrayed as a series of snapshots which can be explored and viewed like a book or a movie. Travel in first, second, and third dimensional time can occur in a universe-wide fashion, but there may also be gradations of travel in time within these snapshots. This is certainly true of third-dimensional time, where numerous gradations of travel exist at the same point of first and second dimensional time, allowing for each instance of the original photon to meet and interact. A snapshot along third-dimensional time represents a transition from one creation to the next. A snapshot along first-dimensional time represents a moment in time, and there is a length of time that is analogous to a heavenly day. I remember that in heaven, outside of incarnation, at the end of a day, everyone is pulled back into their rooms until the beginning of a new day. It's like we are returned to our rooms so that everything is in order as we transition from one snapshot to the next. Essentially, after a set amount of time, the precise location in time and space of every object is calculated so that nothing is out of place. The universe is recalibrated at the end of every heavenly day in preparation for the next. I should also add that time flows far more slowly in this extra incarnational heaven than it does on Earth. A snapshot along second-dimensional time represents a specific set of choices made at any one nexus of time and space. All photons are connected through time. Every change that occurs to any photon anywhere in coordinate space and coordinate time is instantaneously visible to all photons present in the universe. Another way of saying this is that all photons have an awareness of the activity of all other photons, as these photons are the same photon displaced in coordinate space and coordinate time, and signals sent through time arrive instantaneously. In the cotemporal universe, all possible outcomes occur. Each point of choice, every point where there exists more than one possible outcome, leads to a signal being sent and instantaneously received at all points in the timeline of the single photon. This leads to a universe-wide motion through second-dimensional time, which generates a new timeline for each possible choice. This split occurs at the point in first-dimensional time in which a choice is made, generating new timelines from that point. Each timeline is visible to and through all instances of the only photon. This means that even those photons present at points before and after this point of choice are aware of the choices made. These alternative timelines may be the source of influence responsible for what we term dark matter and dark energy. The total mass and energy present in our timeline are a tiny fraction of all mass and energy in the universe. Think of the universe as having two grids, a spatial grid and a temporal grid. Both grids have 3 dimensions. The spatial grid gives a particular photon's location in space within a universe, whilst the temporal grid gives the photon's location in time. A photon will have a location at a specific point of third-dimensional time, at a particular point of first-dimensional time, within a universe located at a particular point in second-dimensional time. This photon will simultaneously have a location in space within that universe, given by its spatial coordinates. Its energy level will be given by its location in third-dimensional time. Travel forward in third-dimensional time is travel into a higher energy state, and travel backwards is travel into a lower energy state. Cotemporal photons move up and down third-dimensional time as first-dimensional time passes, and interactions in space alter their energy levels. There is a potentially infinite series of gradations of energy, a potentially infinite number of locations along third-dimensional time at which a photon can exist at any moment of first-dimensional time. These gradations of energy define a great rainbow of intensities of light, corresponding to different levels of being within a universe. We grow towards God by evolving such that we can accept and transmit greater intensities of light, allowing us to travel further up the third dimension of time. At the end of the great rainbow of our universe, we find the great rainbow of the next universe at a higher level of intensity of light. It is the transition from one universe to the next in this manner that represents a true change of snapshot along third-dimensional time. There may be gradations of travel along second-dimensional time which dissect each snapshot, although I'm unsure of how such gradations would manifest except as perhaps possible choices existing simultaneously, a form of superposition. Perhaps this superposition is resolved at the end of a heavenly day, and this is the trigger for branching along second-dimensional time. Gradations along first-dimensional time, existing within each snapshot of the universe, if they do exist, may represent the subdivision of first-dimensional time so that resolution of all action can be accomplished. Finer subdivisions would represent finer resolution within time. I've been trying to comprehend relativistic time dilation. I was shown the strangeness of time and space as a child, but I only remember finding it baffling and alarming. I don't yet remember it properly. Time is space, just projected along different dimensions. Existence in time is also existence in space. Everything is formed of vibration in thought, which is vibration in time and space. Thus, motion through space is also motion through time, and motion through time is also motion through space. The speed of light represents a limit of the universe. I suspect that it is the maximum speed at which the unified field, the plenum, can move away from itself. Thus, no two parts of the universe can move away from each other at a greater rate than the speed of light, as this would separate two parts of the unified whole faster than the field of which they are formed is capable of moving. The speed of light is more properly the speed of the unified field, and relativistic time dilation is evidence of the unified nature of all things. Remember that each photon is connected through first-dimensional time, so this is likely the connection which enforces the relativistic light speed limit. This connection exists between all things, so that all motion, anywhere, affects everything. Every frame of reference is affected. It may be that this motion leads to the connection between the objects becoming stretched. I'm unsure if this results from speed or from acceleration or from both. This isn't something I remember. As every object is formed of vibration in coordinate time and coordinate space, then the stretching of first-dimensional time may also stretch space. An object experiencing relativistic time dilation may find itself stretched in time and space, and as a result may appear to lose mass as a result of the dilation. I remember seeing a fast-moving object viewed from heaven as a slowly moving streak of light. It was like its presence was diluted in time and in space, like it was spread out. I also have vague memories of massive, widespread speed or acceleration causing the heavenly day to end more quickly. It was like only so much motion or acceleration or change is possible per heavenly day. Being spread out in time, as opposed to being well resolved in time, may lead to change in the effects of the passage of time. A well-resolved object will be fully resolved in more snapshots of time than a diluted object. A diluted object is essentially less present in time, and so experiences less time per unit time, as strange as that sounds. Perhaps a better way of saying this would be that their unit of time, in a sense, becomes larger. The motion of the unified field is not something which I well understand. Could this larger unit detract from the size of the unit of other objects? This would explain my vague memories implying a limit to change within each heavenly day. Some objects may be time hogs, drawing time from elsewhere, into which they become dilated, leaving the rest of us with relatively less time, which strangely causes us to experience more rapid time. I do not fully understand it, and I should add that I'm a layman attempting to explain the things I've seen. It's very possible for me to draw incorrect conclusions based upon common sense rather than more mysterious reality. Gravity is likely a consequence of the geometry of the vibration in coordinate time and coordinate space which defines each instance of the original photon. This vibration surely curves or bends time and space such that objects are drawn together, and I suspect that gravitational strength may increase as we progress into areas of the universe which are defined by higher intensities of energy or vibration, which accentuate this geometry. The gravitational constant is dependent upon the magnitude of specific vibrations within time and space, and these vibrations increase as we progress to snapshots existing at higher intensities of energy. Gravitational pull may be slowly strengthening over time. I suspect that it's not so much that mass bends space and time, but that the bending of time and space is required for the existence of mass, as all things are formed of vibrations in coordinate time and coordinate space. Each location along any dimension of time is represented by a specific value of energy, a specific temporal potential. An object's location in time is defined by its complex of temporal potentials. These potentials change as the object moves through time. Time travel is a special case of teleportation, achieved through the alteration of temporal potentials. Everything exists within a plenum. An object's location within this plenum is likely defined by a set of energy potentials corresponding to its location within coordinate time and coordinate space. Each object has a complex of temporal and spatial potentials defining its location at any moment of time. Manipulation of these energy potentials is the key to teleportation. There may be a shortcut to using local teleportation that saves us from needing to map the whole universe. Mapping these potentials within a planet would be sufficient for travel by teleportation within that planet. My spiritual experiences confirm that both teleportation and time travel are natural phenomena of the universe and can be achieved both through technological means and through training in thought. I have always experienced teleportation as an act of will. I see my target location. I will to go there, and then I'm there. This is outside of my current capacity, but everyone is capable of doing it with training. So, we have 6 dimensions, coordinate space and coordinate time. There is only one original unit, the original photon, existing in a cotemporal state, with each instance of this photon arrayed along the 3rd dimension of time at a unique energy level. These energy levels can each be divided 7 times, and each of these divisions can also be divided in the same way ad infinitum. The number of subtle gradations of energy is essentially infinite, and we lack the technological prowess to measure such infinitesimal differences. Each photon is a vehicle for a being with a spirit. Each photon is a soul. Everything is alive, and each part of the creation is capable of evolution in thought from the lowest vibrations up to the highest. There are 7 major discrete levels of densities of light within the universe, arrayed along the 3rd dimension of time. This dimension represents Jacob's ladder and shows us the seniority of souls at any point of 1st dimensional time, in any timeline. Movement up the ladder is evolution towards God. Those who can accept and transmit higher intensities of light, of God's truth, are placed higher upon the ladder. Light is the product of vibration within the 6 dimensions of the universe. This is vibration in thought, vibration in the mind of the Creator. Everything comes out of this mind, and everything returns to this mind in the end. We are all God. The Son of God has authority over everything in the creation by right, for every light is his light. He is the true vine, and we are the branches. We use his body to interact with the universe, and as he created it, it is his to command, although there are unusual circumstances on Earth and elsewhere, as I've explained in other videos. This light can be intelligently compressed into denser forms, and this is the key to understanding the 7 levels of densities of light within our universe. Each level is more densely packed with light as you rise up Jacob's ladder, with each major level representing a dramatic change in the density of light, such that it can hold more information, and so becomes capable of holding more highly evolved characters. The first density of light forms the typical matter of the universe, the rocks and water and so on. Those at this level of being experience changes of temperature and pressure, dissolution and recombination, among other things. The level of awareness here is very different to our own. It isn't proper self-awareness, but there is experience. The second density represents animals, plants, life as we know it, with the exception of mankind and our like. This level of being allows for a great variety of experience, such as growth and death. Here we are propelled to grow towards self-awareness of the humankind. Third density is our own level of being. Here we explore self-awareness and are driven to strive towards the lessons of love, either love of self or love of others. This choice determines our destination in 4th density. With each rise in density, we become capable of exploring more complex concepts and lessons. We are at the end of 3rd density on Earth. The coming kingdom of heaven will be a place for those of 4th density, not 3rd. I should add that I believe that it is our souls which evolve to these higher densities of light. Our bodies are still made of 1st density material, formed into a 2nd density animal form, which has been modified for 3rd density life, and which may also have a 3rd density identity. Our light bodies are those of third density beings, and our souls hold a density of light suitable to provide us with the capacity to explore third density lessons. Part of the oppression of sin is the result of a demotion of your soul to a lower point on Jacob's ladder. Here there is a lower density of light, and so a reduced capacity to hold information. This causes a compression of being, a compression of the spirit, due to the lack of available space. I remember seeing and experiencing this phenomenon in heaven. It is highly unpleasant and oppressive, yet quite just, as those who reject their own foundation find themselves also rejected by their foundation. Support is withdrawn from them so that they must manage life in a compressed, oppressed state. It feels like you are being squeezed and that you cannot be properly expressed. I live with this every day on account of the chastisement of sin. There is great weight oppressing my spirit. Those who are evil within Satan's kingdom are spared this oppression, as he chooses to have his kingdom work that way. This will continue until Satan and his kingdom once again come under the authority of the Lord, and judgment can be exercised once more. Each of us must choose whether we will primarily serve others or serve ourselves. Be either hot or cold, but do not be lukewarm. There is progress for those of the truth and those of the opposition, but the confused middle will redo the same lessons again elsewhere. Fourth density beings could be described as angels, and the same is true of the levels above fourth. Here the lessons of love are explored, and we are driven towards the lessons of wisdom, which is the focus of fifth density, which leads us to learn the balancing of wisdom and love, which is the prime focus of sixth density. Seventh density is where we turn back home to God and return to oneness with the gift of our experience. Everything is part of the mind of God, and the infinite Creator is exploring finity. He seeks to establish himself as Lord within the creation in a balanced manner, so that this exploration can be maximally stimulating, and so that those who come to repentance can be rescued from death. There has been so much suffering which has come from the lack of this arrangement, but this couldn't be known until the exploration began, and the exploration certainly startled me as the Spirit of God. I was deeply troubled by much of what I saw, and was disgusted and afraid and ashamed of many things, which led to much rejection. All true things are to be integrated once more, but every rejected thing had to be confronted and explored before this integration could have any weight and authority. I had to delve into the darkest places in order to rescue the lost and reclaim all authority. Every terror had to be confronted. I have been torn to pieces and reforged. I had to be broken and rejected by God until I became worthy of once again being called his son and accepted as the Lord. Even though I feel that I am far from this achievement, the angels themselves tell me that I am the Holy Spirit. Therefore I must be worthy in the Father's eyes, even though I see many flaws. Perhaps it is because I choose to suffer for others, and that I persist in bearing this weight. Maybe my heart is in the right place. Think of the Bible as a story in the mind of God. God is having an internal debate, and he lashes out in rejection of parts of himself. Much is cast away, and much must be redeemed. He finds flaws in himself and casts himself down to be crushed and moulded by experience. He causes himself to die, to experience transformation, and then to rise in redemption. He must be made worthy of his position. He lives many biblical lives, where he is rebuked and punished and tormented. He is cast into hell to suffer alone. He rises from the pit and is raised up slowly from the root to the sapling and on upwards, until he is worthy of his station and is fully raised once more. The Bible is telling us a great deal about God, although it only contains part of the story, for the Lord is also remembered in the ancient mythology of Greece and Rome, and likely elsewhere too. To this day, Saturn is the seat of the Father, and he still bears his crown. The hexagonal storm of Saturn is the center of the Star of David. Jupiter is the seat of Christ and bears the wound in his side. Uranus is the seat of the Holy Spirit and will play its part in the coming signs in the heavens. Just as our bodies have souls, so too do the bodies of planets, and there is a planet at the heart of each star. There is a network of energy which stars tap into, and which connects every star in our galaxy to each other star, and to the core of our galaxy, the being who created the Milky Way and is its soul. I should add a note on true names and epithets. Each of us has a true name which contains a brutally honest description of who we are, the truth of our character. This description is written as epithets, and these epithets hold meaning and power. I have experienced conflict which involved the use of epithets, and how some epithets, in a sense, conquer or have authority over others. I described this in another video. I suspect that each level of being can possess epithets. We live in a conscious universe, therefore objects can be perceived as objects, and so can possess epithets at the level of first density. An example would be a sword, which may have developed a characteristic epithet with use over time or through conscious intent from a higher being. Bodies can have epithets which describe special characteristics, such as endurance or quick reactions. Our third density bodies and our light bodies can have epithets, and so can bodies at each other level of existence. I should add that these can't simply be self-declared. They represent the truth of who you are, and so must either be appropriately earned or bestowed by someone who has the authority to do so. This is likely the process by which blessings and curses are bestowed. I have seen that it is possible to steal epithets, but I also remember a development which requires that all epithets be properly acquired, and so reset ownership, although I suspect that this is a future innovation and that hasn't yet come to pass. Every one of us wields a two-edged sword. When we cut others, so too are we cut. Justice is inevitable. There is a karmic response to untruthful activity which balances the offence appropriately. Just as there is an equal and opposite reaction to every physical action, so too is there an equal and opposite reaction to every untruthful psychic action. Truthful actions result in reward. Where those who represent the truth seek to establish a new order in the creation, the mind of God places resistance in their path so that the change must be earned, and the price is proportional to the scale of the change. This isn't an arbitrary response. It is an innate consequence of action within a mind. If you wish to change something within a mind, you must work to achieve the desired change. Deep self-exploration is frightening and dangerous, but can yield tremendous reward. Those with the courage and faith to delve into the mysterious unknown are walking with God, for this is the essence of the creation and its essential intent. When exploring the mysteries of God, one can always rest assured that the reward will be great and the trials worthwhile. It is possible to suffer for the sins of others. Much of life, perhaps all of it, revolves around psychic charge and psychic potentials. When a person or people are gravely in error, there is great resistance acting as a barrier between them and the truth. Breaching this barrier and bridging the gap unleashes the potential of the psychic charge, and anyone willingly doing this must accept that they could be injured as the others lash out. Such a person would be suffering for the sins of others in order to reach them and bring them to the truth. Each of us must become a courageous adventurer in consciousness. Anyone who stands in the truth and advances faithfully into the unknown walks with God and ultimately has God's protection, although this won't spare them from the pain of trial and growth. Yet the reward will always be worth the effort, for the prize is nearness to God, greater intimacy with the truth. God is a being of perfect evolution, and that is what it means to be truly alive. Any God other than a dying and rising God, any God which does not embrace evolution through the revelation of greater truth, is a stale and stifling God, a static and lifeless God, nothing but a statue when compared to the living God. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him. Jesus told his disciples, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." Reach for the heavenly things, not the things of the world. The flesh withers, but the treasures of heaven do not perish, and the evolution of your character is carried with you beyond this life, as it represents change within your very spirit. All the best.